the scale and rate that innovation is occurring is only accelerating. And what I mean by that is, if you have technology that is greater than 10 years of age, it is likely that you are significantly behind.
Hello. Welcome to Hired the Podcast. As always, you got Travis Miller here with you, Noah Cuff behind the scenes, and today I'm pleased to be joined by Chris Stevens. Chris, my friend, this man is a seasoned manufacturing professional specializing in operational improvement and excellence. Currently, the guy is the PMO Business Excellence Manager at Abbott. But one of the many reasons I'm excited to talk to Chris is he's the founder of the Home of Manufacturing and Manufacturing Media. His platforms are dedicated to amplifying the voices within the manufacturing industry. And he's also the host of the forthcoming podcast, Manufacturing Nation, set to debut this spring. Am I right, Chris?
That is correct. If all goes well and I can get a little bit of the jitters out of the way, we'll be doing hopefully bi-weekly podcast come late spring.
I'm excited to hear it. So, Chris, my first question is, it's a really interesting journey that led you here, and I'm curious about the Venn diagram of life experiences and events that brought you to Abbott and caused you to want to create something like the Home of Manufacturing.
Wonderful question, Travis. And I think for me, like where that Venn diagram, intersects or all comes together is really around some of the pain points in my career. It's the things that I've struggled with, the challenges that I've looked for other resources to overcome. I just didn't have or wasn't able to find them repeatedly. I would say about a year ago, I was very interested in looking into a lot of different trade shows, the different events that are happening both locally here in Minnesota or, nationally, even internationally. And I really couldn't find any good answer. And after complaining and telling my wife for many months on end, like, I really wish that this would exist. And like, I can't find it. Someone's got to have it. She's like, just build it yourself. And I think at that point in time, the epiphany happened of, okay, well, all right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to build it myself. So that started a long journey of a couple months of, scouring the internet, searching for different things. And the more I did it, the more I started to realize how fragmented this space really is, and that there's not a lot of information centralized in a easy to digest manner. It's on individuals' web pages, on company web pages. Not all trade shows are exactly published that well. So through all that effort, I started to realize, there really isn't a good free source of information that individuals can come to, share knowledge, gain knowledge, learn from it. And the whole mindset I had behind the Home of Manufacturing was it can't be gated. It has to be free. I don't want people's, email addresses, phone numbers, social security numbers, firstborn child, dog name, cat name, whatever it might be. It's just got to be free. It's got to be easy to get to, no challenges, it's just there. The more I dug into it, started to realize it was far beyond just events. It started to become the voices of manufacturing and all the different people that are talking about it. And I think I just, as of a couple of days ago, I think we're up to like over 450 years of experience from the list. And I was, talking with some other folks, and it was like, if one of those years of that 450 can't solve your problem today, it's probably not a problem that exists, or, I'm sure a lot of people will be open and willing to help solve it. So, that mix of all that coming together and that Venn diagram of just being an entire career of problem solving, I just found a problem. I was like, okay, I got to fix it. I got to find a way to make it better, because if I'm asking the question, I'm sure there's others that are asking the exact same question that I am. And I wanted to help them too.
Probably put the cart before the horse here a little bit. For those that don't know, can you tell them a little bit about what is the Home of Manufacturing and what is Voices of Manufacturing?
Yeah, great question. And definitely a little cart before the horse, but that's, as in life, you get going and start to realize what you make. And so again, the home of manufacturing is a website. It's the home of mfg.com. And primarily what it serves today is there's two categories. There's an entire section that is events, trade shows, demonstrations, technology shows, primarily United States. I'm starting to get a little international aspect to that, but mostly North America. So I think I'm up to roughly 80 to 100 trade shows for the rest of this year. So there's a whole list, gives you links to every different event, tells you a little bit about it, location, dates, kind of all the details. The other half of the webpage, as it is currently, is the voices of manufacturing. It'll give you podcasts, YouTube, LinkedIn, anywhere someone is talking about manufacturing or hiring talent, business development, kind of all that realm there is that entire section. And I think I'm up to 35 or 40 list on the list right now. And I continue to add 1 to 2 a week as I learn more, and the community helps me find those voices that I haven't heard of or others are learning from. So it's very much a community driven platform. And when I say community, there's a nice little submit button down at the bottom of the screen. And if there's anything that I've missed or, overlooked, tell me. Like that's been the fun part for me is I'll get an email like, hey, have you ever heard of this trade show? And I'm like, no, I haven't. Tell me more. And, then I think I learned about a whole new, brand new trade show. I'll give you a prime example. The MFG or manufacturing trade show. I didn't even know that was a thing until this year. Unfortunately, the schedules didn't quite align to attend, but, I talked to some folks that learned about the show from my website, ended up going to like, this was the best trade show. We're going every year from now on. So I think a lot of that starts to happen where the community comes along and shares, and people are at least brought aware of or knowledge that it exists, and then they can go explore and learn themselves.
So with all of these, you probably learned an incredible amount about the industry and about the people industry and about some of the voices in the industry over the last couple of months, because you just started this late last year, right?
Yeah, I would say it was very much a thought in November. And then I'm going to say pencil really started to hit the paper in December. And by January, it was an all out sprint. And then mid-January, I picked a date. It was February 5th because I liked the idea of 2/5/25. It just seemed like that was the date that jumped out at me. Like, yeah, 25/25. Yeah, beautiful. Love the numbers. Let's go with it. So yeah, it's not more than 6 months or 6 months of age. And the learning curve has been exponential, I'll say. Just trade shows, learning how to make a web page, how to do database management. It's kind of what I would say, getting fed from the fire hose, if you will.
Mm-hmm. So what are you seeing out there with the amount of people that you're talking to? What are some trends you're seeing out there in the world of manufacturing right now?
I think that right now the world of manufacturing is in a very unique situation. Post-COVID, there's a lot of technology shifts, a lot of advancements that are coming out of it. And, I think I should say from what I've seen or what I find to be true is that the innovation or the scale and rate of that innovation is occurring is only accelerating. And what I mean by that is if you have technology that is greater than 10 years of age, it is likely that you're significantly behind. And what I mean by that, it's not just the machine on the floor. It's not the ERP or whatever, Microsoft product you're running these days. I think it's across the board, and that goes into even the skills. What I've noticed is now I'll pick on robotics. It's just an easy example. And there's this huge fear that robots and robotics automation are coming for the workforce's jobs. And my answer is absolutely, yes, it is. But very much like, NASA days when the Apollo missions of that nature, the drafters were all super worried when the computers started coming out that their jobs would be gone. Yes, their jobs are gone. There's no more hand drafting going on today, but all of those individuals became, skilled in something else and then leveraged the computer to do more. And I think from that standpoint, if I connect all these dots together in a giant, picture, it's really starting to say is the companies manufacturing, and I think this goes outside of manufacturing, but those that are able to upskill their workforce and their individuals to do more with the same amount of time and accomplish more are those that are going to really thrive in that space. And lo and behold, I think the side effect of that has been they're so successful that they have no other option than to grow and hire more individuals. So I think that's where I see the biggest trend is this level of, we'll call it, industry 5.0, if you will. Everyone's got their own version of it. For me, I think it's going to be more focused on skill development. How do we teach people to level up or evolve their skills in a much more rapid pace than we haven't seen in the past?
It's there's a lot of that going on in my industry too, in recruiting, and that conversation is revolving around artificial intelligence. And it's that AI is going to take our jobs. And how many jobs are there out there that people are worried that AI is going to take their job? And for the history of the recruiting industry, there has always been something that is going to take our jobs. First it was the ability to make long-distance phone calls was going to kill the recruiting industry. The fax machine was going to kill the recruiting industry. The internet was going to kill the recruiting industry. Career Builder was going to kill it. LinkedIn was going to kill it. Video interviews were going to kill it. Artificial intelligence is going to kill it. None of it has killed it. But the people who refuse to learn and adapt and adopt the new technologies, they're the ones who are in danger versus the ones who are embracing it and utilizing all of the new tools and technologies to the best of their ability. What are some of the skills and knowledge that people in manufacturing can gain to stay ahead of that curve so that they do become indispensable versus the people who aren't using what things and learning what things?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And a couple of things come to mind when I think about that is, very much like the recruiting space, you go fax machine, internet, video calls, LinkedIn, of that nature. And I'll pick on LinkedIn a little bit too is, I think the stats vary a little bit, but I think less than 7% of users on LinkedIn actively post or comment. And then less than 1% of that actively post or comment more than one time in a given month, which is quite astonishing of how green that space is. And I kind of look at that and make a correlation to that in manufacturing. There's a lot of technologies that are, in my opinion, heavily underused or aren't used to their fullest potential. And those individuals that are able to kind of tap into that, find that green area, green space, and evolve in there will quickly find, severe advancements. A couple of things that come to mind, we talk about like CNC machining and CAD programming. There's a whole bunch of different solutions out there that are really kind of tweaking or coming out with an AI perspective. And their whole idea is don't replace the person, just make them more efficient. And I think we have to start looking at all these tools, not as a sense of it's going to replace me, but how does that give me 5 to 10% more efficiency in my day-to-day job so that I can go do something else? That something else might be spend time with your kids, spend time with your dog, work on a side project or build a website with trade shows and voices. Those are the things that I look at manufacturing and I'll call it the talent within it are going to have to focus on. And then I could go on and on with a whole list of different tools that I've seen or have demoed, researched, dug into. The challenge is what is relevant today in 6 months. There might be 3 other competitors going against it, and the feature sets are changing. To me, I think it's both a positive and also a negative, is that because innovation is happening so quickly, it's really hard to, I'm going to say, quote unquote, master some of these tools. Because I just had one the other day. I was like, oh, we've updated a new feature and the old one's not there. I'm like, but wait, I just learned how to use that one. Now I need to learn a new one. All jokes and kidding aside, it's pushing us to advance. it's just, we'll have to keep a very open mind of, we're going to have to relearn every 6 months how to do our roles and how to do our jobs with the advancements or changes that we're seeing in technology, shop floor, ERP systems, you kind of name it, recruiting softwares. I'm sure they're got a lot of changes that are happening on a monthly, quarterly, annual basis.
Yeah. What do you see the best companies doing out there to encourage this growth, this continuous learning, to always trying to stay ahead of these technological advances?
Yeah, that's one. I'll say it varies by company size.
Okay.
Obviously, you have, super large organizations that have, some pretty deep and expansive budgets to invest and get scale of economy from software solutions. What I think is going to be an interesting perspective, and I've talked about this with a few different folks and a few different groups, is I look at what's happening is in the past, small companies had a very tough challenge of getting the economy of scale as the big organizations. I think that gap is actually closing, and it's closing quite rapidly. And what I mean by that is you had stuff like SAP, you had, Oracle, and all these NetSuite, really big organizations that have very powerful software systems. But now you're starting to see a lot of those same features and softwares built for small companies that allow them to scale, work, and operate in ways that previously was done in, I think every LinkedIn joke has this, is like, what runs your shop? Excel. And you pull the hood off the villain. That's kind of what we're starting to see, is that these software solutions are giving the legs to smaller organizations, I say small to mid-size, to compete at a very competitive nature with the larger organizations. Almost to the fall where I'm starting to see it swing into the favor of small to mid-size, because they're more flexible, more nimble to react and, I'll say, shift with the changing of the winds and really get into something that's different. And what I was thinking of when I was kind of like walking through that is, one of the things that I've seen that's really kind of coming in there is quoting. There's a lot of companies that are investing a lot of time into how to make quoting faster, more efficient, more effective from the manufacturing job shop mentality. I think we now are starting to live in a world of speed. And when I think about quoting and kind of that skill development, is the on-demand portion of it. And what I'm seeing, at least for the companies that are thriving really well, is they're intentionally taking the time each week, each quarter, each month to invest and go explore different options. Now, they're not per se sending everyone, hey, go look at software A. They'll send someone and say, hey, go check out software A, come back and share with the team what you learned. I think that is really where I see the difference between them. I'll call it the A player companies and the B players. Is the A companies are sending individuals out, kind of exploring, and then they come back and share what they learned. And then they repeat that every month, every quarter, to really continuously always be looking what's out on the horizon, what's in the future, what can we be prepared for. So for me, I think, at least my personal belief is, you have to always be looking for a solution, so that when you actually have the problem that you need to solve for, you have an idea of what the solution might be. If you're waiting for the problem to arise, then finding the solution, it's probably too late and you're already behind, in my opinion.
How do you avoid burdening your people out? If every month I'm sending a vanguard out to say, try this, try this, try this, try this. And you're obviously not going to adopt every piece of technology that you try. And you just mentioned earlier how I just learned this system took me 6 months to do it, and now you changed it. If they're always learning new things and they're not utilizing it, at what point, how do you keep them from saying, oh, Jesus, here comes another new tool. Good God.
Yeah. I think for me it's small bites. There's a lot of companies that are looking for the home run solution, and they're going to say, I need the one software solution, one answer that's going to solve from HR to accounting to sales, marketing, delivery, customer management, CRM systems. Like they want one answer. I don't think that's just unrealistic. And I think instead of saying go out and find the technology, it's go out and see what others are challenged with. Go out and see what others are trying to solve for. Less about the technology, because the technology will, I'll say, ebb and flow and curve with it. But I find it more interesting or more fascinating to say, like, what are the pain points that other organizations are currently having? I'll take, for example, very recent, times in the news, with tariffs with North America, between Canada, United States, and Mexico, that's a pain point. So I'm going to go to different events and ask the questions like, how is tariffs or how is this change influencing the way that you do business and the things that you operate? I think that's a huge question that a lot of people are going to start asking questions of, well, how do we adapt and I'll call it be flexible to the changing of the winds of the world and, different events that are happening, whether people are for or against it doesn't necessarily matter. That's what is happening. So I think to your point is like burnout is go with a very specific question in mind and not try to solve for boil the ocean, if you will, because you'll absolutely get burnt out if you try to find the answer to everything rather than just, one small piece that's going to advance your organization or your area just a little bit. I think too many people try to go for the grand slam hit. And I'm like, you just need singles. That's all you need. You just need to get on base and keep doing that time and time again, and you'll stay ahead.
I'm hesitant to bring this up because we're recording this in early mid-March. And if this doesn't come out for a couple of weeks, who knows what the hell the world is going to look like. But I guess my question is, in the current landscape, current climate where things are shifting and changing politically, both globally and domestically, what the hell does somebody do to plan? How do you, when you have no idea what's... Okay, so
what's going to happen tomorrow?
Yeah, I was kind of pissed, So last year, it felt like there was always something. People they weren't bidding out big projects. There wasn't a lot of capital expenditure. Hiring was kind of flat because there were all of these, wait and see excuses. Well, interest rates are still really, really high, but we think they're going to go down, but we're going to wait and see before we make any decisions. And inflation's really high, and they say they're working to bring it down, but we're going to wait and see. And then we've got an election coming in. Well, not sure who's going to be elected, so we're going to wait and see. And finally, at the end of last year, I kind of went, I really don't see any more of those wait and see excuses off on the horizon. And well, holy shit, was I wrong. I mean, there's always something to wait and see what happens. How do companies combat that when it comes to purchasing decisions, when it comes to investments in their organization, when it comes to hiring? How do you navigate the landscape of uncertainty? Because there's always going to be uncertainty. Mm-hmm. What do you see the good companies doing? Well, what do you do?
And I think you hit it on the head is uncertainty. And how I have coached, in my current role and then the consulting that I've done throughout the industry, I talk a lot about uncertainty and risk. And what I have found is you have to ask the organization, what is your comfort and interest in levels of risk? There are companies that will be, hey, you know what? We're very risk adverse. We don't want to take any risk. We can't afford it. That's fine. And then there's companies like, hey, like SpaceX, let's risk it all. Let's bet the whole farm on this thing. Let's go all out. Like there's nothing stopping us. And so there's kind of a balance of, are you the high risk or the low risk individuals, organizations of that nature, and you kind of find this balance. What I have found though is the companies that do really well with uncertainty and change is they talk a lot about what I won't call it like disaster recovery, but it's the what if scenarios. And I've written a couple posts about this and definitely want to do a deeper dive into a series regarding it, is really focusing in on like, how do you come up with different game plans? For example, now we talk a lot about, at least here in Minnesota, this week we got 8 inches of snow overnight, basically canceled school, like everything just came to a grinding halt. And we're a community that's used to getting lots of snow. It just hit us at a weird time and we weren't necessarily prepared for it. But you kind of have to ask the companies, like, what contingency plans do you have in place? Whether it's, you can have California with forest fires, you can have floods in the southeast, you can have snow here in Minnesota, or I know some of my friends in Alabama had snow. You start asking all these questions, and it's the uncertainty or the what if scenarios. And I think as leaders or organizations, you start to have to ask the questions of, if there are certain events that disrupt normal operations, it's not necessarily what you need to do. It's, does everybody know their roles and responsibilities on how to keep the business running and who has the authority to make such decisions? Give you, for example, if you have a shift lead or a supervisor, plant manager, and you have a snowstorm, who has the right to stop manufacturing? To tell everyone, hey, stay home, work from home, or hey, if you're within 15 miles of the plant, we're asking you to come in. If you're not, we're going to give you, it was on a Wednesday, we're going to give you Wednesday as a quote unquote weekend, and then we're going to have you work on Saturday. Like a lot of those flexibilities. And I think from there is, as we get more change and more uncertainty in the world, I think we have to start looking at is, how do we become more flexible and give the right people the authority or responsibility to make decisions? And I'm forgetting the name of the company. The owner has a very strict thing, is he has no vacation policies, and you don't get PTO. It just doesn't exist for him. His whole thing is, you need to work 4 days a week for me. That's it. And he goes, if you want to take a week off, then you need to, split up your time in other places, and you figure it out. But 4 days a week, that's what I asked for. And that's how I manage it. But he gives the authority to each individual person to make their decisions on when is work right for them? When does it fit their schedule? How does that function? And so kind of where I'm getting to that and the uncertainty is, I think we have to stop or ask our leadership teams and our organizations managers is to not make all the decisions, but inform those that should be making the decisions and what the bounds or the box that they have to work with. Mm-hmm. Once everyone understands, hey, here's the levers or the space that I can work in and have the right to go in and do that, great, amazing things start to happen. And we really start to see, I'll say, more common sense applications start to come into play, where people are making decisions and they're making them very quickly and rapidly. And the business continues to move forward at a pace that was almost feels like there was no interruption at all. So I think to your point, and bringing it back to spending capital and all that nature, is like, the money just didn't go from 10 million to zero. Is there a 1 million option? Is there something to make it incrementally small but keep it moving forward? Can you get creative in how you're doing your financing or how you're going to do your planning? I think that's, in my opinion, we're going to start to see that these small, mid-sized companies that are more nimble and flexible, that give the authority further down the organization, are going to start thriving and doing things that some of these big organizations are going to scratch their head and go, how in the world are they doing this? Like, they're doing it for half the cost, half the time, and they're still profitable.
Can you think of an organization that's doing it, and how are they implementing what you're talking about?
Yeah, I don't have any off the top of my head. I have one in mind, but I can't say their name because I'm actively working with them and have a couple NDAs in place for that. But for them, what they're doing is they're actually looking at how to remove their middle management. And what I say by that is they are looking at, and they're about 17 to 1,800 employees. And the owner, CEO says, I don't want more than 3 levels in the organization. And so he's trying to remove all the middle management from his organization. And he looks at it as like, not as a punishment. He goes, we don't need multiple levels for people to make decisions and escalate. He goes, I'm going to push the responsibility further down. And he's letting his, for one example, it's a CNC area, and they're doing I think about 45 machines. And one of the managers there is got the engineering, the operations. And what they do is they have a daily stand up. Every morning they meet and they huddle around. They talk about the challenges of the day. They list them on the board. And then everyone says, what are you going to work on? And everyone picks what they want to work on and where they can contribute to the organization. And they have kind of their mission of to, bring the best quality for the best price to their customers. And everything that they work on has to tie back to that mission or vision of the company. And if it doesn't do work done. They just say, nope, it doesn't match with our mission. We're okay with that. And we'll, politely set it to the side and stay focused on what moves the company forward. So I think from the application standpoint, we have to really dig in and look at what are organizations doing to enable all levels to make decisions so that they can make a decision and move quickly in the direction that they want to.
It's hiring people who believe and embody the mission and vision of the organization, and hiring those people that have the determination and the responsibility and then the freedom to do it.
Exactly. And I think I'll add one important key to that is there's a lot of companies that are like, well, I need talent and, they need to have the certain skill sets. I kind of disagree to a certain extent is if you don't have that mission that people can embody and live, or the bigger calling than just a paycheck, you're not going to get that extra 5-10%, because when people are passionate about something, they work 10 times harder at it. And I'm not saying like 10 times longer, but they put in everything that they can to make it successful because they believe in it. And I think that is a challenge. And I'm sure you've seen this, with a variety of different companies, is culture is becoming a huge thing that has been just talked about for a while, but it's real now. Like if there's not a bigger cause or a bigger calling for the company, the younger generation they're not interested anymore. They're like, I want something that is big, it's impactful, it's doing good, and it's driving something bigger than me forward. And that gives me excitement to come to work.
So tell me about your podcast. What was the impetus for you to say, you know what, I want to be on the other side of the microphone?
I think a lot of it comes down to is just experimentation. Much of my career and much of my life has always been about, try the uncomfortable, do it because you learn. And that's where I've learned the most, even in building the website, going on podcasts like this. You learn a lot of different things. You kind of step outside your comfort zone. So for me, I think there was, as I looked at a lot of different podcasts, and I mean, don't get me wrong, amazing content across the board. One of the areas that I felt like was kind of missing was, digging into some of the stories of like problem solving, failures, and triumph. So I'm hoping to kind of put a little bit of a twist on the podcast, more of having interviews with people that went through a very specific or niche problem that they worked on in an organization, how they approached it, what tools that they used, why they approached it that way, what were the results that they kind of got out. So if you think of it like a home makeover show, here's a not so great looking house. Multiple weeks later, here's this beautiful brand new looking house. Kind of a similar mindset from that, but really digging into a more in-depth analysis and pulling back a few layers, if you will, to figure out what was the story, what do people do, how did they do it, give me all the details and kind of nerd out, if you will, on what they did.
So who's going to be your ideal guest?
Ideal guest. I think for me, the ideal guest is going to be more of your, I'll say, mid to entry level employees that are just getting started, are trying to understand what happens in the world of manufacturing and engineering. And for me, I want it to be all levels, but a little bit more of the, hey, I work on the shop floor. I deal with this type of equipment, trying to solve for this problem. What are my options? What tools do I have? So mid to entry level employees, the trades, digging into that. I really want to kind of highlight some of the cool things that are happening in that space. Then I also do want to kind of dabble a little bit of the C-suite executives, owners, and focus on what they can do to be supportive of the entry level skilled labor and what tools they can leverage to help upskill their individuals within their organization.
If you talk to anybody yet, because especially what they can do to support, I want to hear what they have to say.
So I haven't talked to anyone yet. I have a very long list of people that I'm trying to get into and chat with. So we're getting there slowly and surely. As you can imagine, I'm juggling a few different things at the moment with the website and getting fed from the fire hose on that aspect and digging into it. But I've been in contact with a couple folks, got some tentative dates scheduled for, I'll call it early spring. And I'm slightly dreadfuling the whole editing process. So I'm going to have to do some quick study and learning quickly on how to do the editing. But I think that's the fun of it and I think what we kind of talked about, the first few are not going to be the greatest, but that's, you kind of have to rip the Band-Aid off and go for it. So I may interview myself for the first one just to kind of test the waters, dip my toe in and make sure that I don't make my first guest look like a total newbie, and I can own the newness myself.
Good luck with that. I am incredibly impressed by, the Colin Cowherds of the world that can just go up there and monologue by themselves for 50 minutes at a time and be interesting and offer insight and not ramble. I mean, I'm an inherently lazy individual, which is why I bring people on like you. I just got to ask you questions. This is a piece of cake.
Yeah, it'll be a different skill set. I think I was talking to my wife about it this week, and it's like, she asked me, does it feel the same? I was like, well, I don't know. I said, I think if you have to answer the questions, that's one thing, but also to ask the question and then react to someone's question answer and, dig deeper. And do you go left? Do you go right? Do you go up, down? It's a whole different set of skills, and I think you practice what you preach. So for me, it's, finding something that's uncomfortable and then learning and studying those that are doing it today and watching different podcasts, see what they do, learn from it, see what I like, what I don't like, coming up with my own style, and we'll see what it goes from there. And then hopefully the community will tell me what they like and tell me I'm an idiot or I'm a genius or something in between.
Yeah, the best laid plans. Let's see, I've got 15 questions that I plan to ask you during this, and I asked you 1, 2, this is great podcasting, by the way. You should definitely have long periods of silence while you read a computer screen during your podcast.
That's the beauty of editing, though. I mean, that's the world we live in today. Every podcast looks so polished and every social media looks great. And all of a sudden, do a little editing and...
Yeah. 2 of the questions on my list got asked. 2 out of 15. It's a good record.
But see, and I think this is actually an interesting, thing, and kind of tying it back into, our whole conversation is like, talk about, uncertainty and there. Like the idea of you coming up with 15 questions, so it gave you a lot to think about. And a lot of things you're like, okay, what if I go there? And then when it comes to time, you may not use it all, but guess what? You did a whole bunch of preparation work and you're confident. I think if I, tie this back in talking to the company I'm working with, I was like, the best thing that could ever happen is you come up with plans for 20 different scenarios and you never use them. Or you use one and you don't have to. Like, that's the best case scenario. The second best case scenario is one of those 20 things happen and everyone knows what to do. And at the end of it, you're like, oh, that wasn't so bad. I was like, I always say, like, the product of the outcome is in equal proportion to the amount of effort you put in for preparation. If you prepare for it, the outcome will be really good. You don't prepare for it, probably not the best result.
Well, Chris, this has been a pleasure. If people want to reach out to you what are the things that people should reach out to you about? And if they want to, how do they find you?
Yeah. So to find me, I'm primarily on LinkedIn. That's the easiest place to find me. So you can find me at Chris Stevens at LinkedIn, or otherwise the Home of Manufacturing. That's the Home of MFG. That's one of our primary pages. Otherwise, our website is thehomeofmanufacturing.com. Either of those places, feel free to DM me, shoot me a message in the submit to form button. I'm very easy to get a hold of, pretty responsive unless it's on weekends. So shoot me a message there. If you want to talk about something, I'm always happy to brainstorm. If there's a voice or event or a tool that you really wish you had, let me know. I know we're starting to build out different tools and trying to create more things to share with the community. So if there's something that you need a problem solved for, let us know. We're happy to at least give you our 2 cents. And if we can answer it, we'll try to point you in a direction that someone can help you with.
Chris Stevens, this has been a pleasure. Really appreciate it. As always, I'm Travis Miller. Thank you to Noah Cuff, our producer. This is Hired the Podcast. Talk to y'all again soon.